Hi, guys. Welcome back. This is the late show. We're not wasting any time. I wanted to start even earlier, but I needed to stuff my face with something. I had a couple more things to do, a couple of more errands to run, but I wanted to come back for a late show. This is your host, Jan Brando. We will hopefully finish what we were talking about in terms of the Philips um, New York watches auction that took place over the last weekend. We have covered most of the other auctions, but somehow, for good reason, we're stalled when we were finishing the second part, the December 11 part of the um, Philips watches auction. And again, I'm saying for good reason because I was lucky enough that uh, I had panelists the last two times that I held earlier shows, that I held courts earlier during the day, where I have a lot of interest from the UK. Um, when you look into the numbers, actually, I think half of my audience is in the UK, half of it is in the US, and then maybe 40-40. And then I have a significant number of people from India, significant number of gentlemen from India, which I really appreciate and which caught me more or less off guard. But it makes sense, right? India is a great country. It's a very populous country, and it's a country that um, where people are fluent in English. So I guess it makes sense. So I appreciate that, and I will try to um, always have earlier shows, even after I return, even after I come back to Los Angeles. I will try to host earlier shows as much as possible, so I can provide this sort of content, live streams for people in the UK, for people in continental Europe, in South Asia, and even on the East Coast, of course, because there will be the time difference once I'm back on um, on the wild, wild West Coast. So we'll see. But let's start with something rather simple. We have talked quite a bit about Audemars Piguet's wandering hours complication. By no means is this Audemars Piguet's invention, but certainly AP was the pioneer in uh, implementing this particular complication on wristwatches, and they have been extremely influential in this regard with this particular model, the Star Wheel, which is 25720. Here in lot 58, it is actually rendered in platinum, which goes to explain also the price that it realized. And once again, I want to remind you that in this particular case, the numbers indicated in magenta are, in fact, including the buyer's premium. um, of course, Audemars Piguet also produced a limited edition of their Star Wheel, of their Wandering Hours complication in the millinery case as well. Those are quite limited. Those were made for the 125th anniversary of the brand. And also in various metals. I find the stainless steel version very attractive because again, it's hard to find something like that in stainless steel um, and in that unusual case. But here in lot 58, it is in that traditional uh, round case with a stepped bezel. It's it's an absolute classic, and in every way, I think beats the current iteration they have in code 1159. Most importantly, because it really makes most visually of the complication, right? With having the star wheels actually transparent, with uh, the stars themselves exposed, of course. Um, and when you have something like this that kind of floats over um, the dial as well as the movement, I think you are better served with preserving that transparency to peek into that main uh, wheel that holds together those three plates for the wandering hours. So in platinum, 25,720 sold for 63,000 on December 10th, actually, for the Philips New York Watches auction. And I had the pleasure of actually trying this on, and it's really a beautiful piece. I mean, quite substantial since it's platinum, but also extremely wearable, of course, because it's basically 36 millimeters, which sits just beautiful on the wrist. Um, by the way, I try not to say anything about this, and God knows that I really don't need to make any more enemies in this particular space. But guys, the proper way of wearing your watch is lower than your wrist bone. The watch should sit under your wrist bone, exactly on your wrist. It is called a wristwatch, for God's sake, not a hand watch, right? I see people wearing their watches also absolutely tight right up here. Um, you want to show off your watch? Wear a t-shirt, roll up your sleeves, do something. Just wear them properly, please. It's an eyesore. It's it hurts. It hurts. Um, and that's why also people keep needing bigger and bigger watches. I feel, because of this thinly veiled attempt of having something else to show off. It's all right. It's all right. There's a reason that these wristwatches existed between 32, 33 to 38 millimeters for almost a century, until people started going crazy with 42s, 44s, and now they're finding ways of scaling them back. um, this is how a watch is supposed to be worn. You can wear, of course, your watches as you wish. Wear them, on a necklace around your neck. Wear them, around another organ. It's not my business, right? But a wristwatch should be worn on the wrist, which means it should sit right under your wrist bone. Anyway, rant ended. So this is the traditional star wheel, and I think it has a lot to offer and still holds great value. These used to be even more neglected and even better of a value just 4 or 5 years ago. But nowadays, in various metals, compared to what they currently have in the lineup, which is the code 1159, what a dog's breakfast of a design. It will never be popular. Um, they can keep trying, but this is where it's at, and this is where the value is still at where you can find the yellow gold versions around $35,000. Again, which is still a good value compared to what you get in terms of code 1159. Which, by the way, that ridiculous argument keeps coming back. Oh, you know, when Royal Oak came out, it wasn't popular either. Does it hurt your head to think? What about the Millenary, for example? Millenary was never cool. Is it making a comeback anytime soon? I mean, there were so many things that were not popular when they came out. The horological history is basically an entire graveyard of undesired models, uninspired designs. And it's rare that something that is unusual actually strikes a note on some other level where you can, in fact, cross over into another realm, right? Don't you dare compare code 1159, which is a mishmash of 5 different existing watch designs, to the Royal Oak, which was actually inspired by someone who was both an artist and artisan, someone who knew how to lift his head and look around himself. Where can I find inspiration for a new watch design? I will look and fantasize about an antiquated diver's helmet. I will look at the conveyor belt in the factory. I will think of the octagon as forming an implicit circle and actually standing in almost in a more perfect way for the round shape of the case. That's influential design. That might not strike a note the minute that it hits the ground, the minute that it's released. But if you take, you know, one piece from your Jules Audemars design, the lugs from De Bethune, the octagonal shape from the Royal Oak, the watch crystal from Greubel Forsey, you're not gonna do anything. You can keep throwing different complications at it. You can finish it at the same level as you finish all your other watches. It is an Audemars Piguet after all. You owe it to your customer. But don't, you know, please don't. I mean, I understand you have a responsibility to your bosses, to the brand, to move product, but don't try to sell this bullshit to knowledgeable customers. And trust me, we are becoming more and more numerous by the day. So this sort of marketing fluff is going to go extinct, or the brands who use these sorts of marketing fluff to move what is unmovable, undesirable, uninspired pieces, those brands are going to go extinct themselves. All right, rant over. I think I still have a little more hate in my heart, but I will keep that. I will sublimate that into something more creative and save it for a rainy day. No pun intended. So I wanted to go to what is a very elegant, very beautiful piece. I really like it when brands like FP Journe, which actually have very distinct design codes that are at some level quite simplistic. An FP Journe watch doesn't need to say FP Journe on the dial. It doesn't need to name the watch on the face, you'll still recognize it. You'll recognize it from the hands. You'll recognize it even from the font of the Arabic numerals. You'll recognize it from the layout of the watch. You get closer, you will start recognizing it from even the curvature of the lugs, no doubt. I really like it for that reason when they start dabbling in things like this, which is actually a very intricate and very beautiful work of gem setting here. If you see the kinds of stones used for the center of the dial, for the subsidiary dial for the seconds, and then for the bezel as well as the lugs, just the selection of the stones merits a second look when it comes to this watch. But it doesn't end there, of course. The sparkle of the dial is the sparkle of the diamonds is perfectly balanced with one this radial guilloche of the hours track in this sort of silvered white, and then of course the blued hands which coordinate within themselves with the background of the moon phase as well as the color of the date wheel. It's really actually a very subtle watch, even though it involves very intricate, very detailed, and very masterful gem setting. This is an Octa Divine or Divine from 2010 with the automatic movement, of course. That's what the Octa series refers to. And again, there's a beautiful balance on the architecture of the movement too. Granted, again, F. Bejon movements might not feature the most exquisite, the most artful, the most attentive kind of hand finishing, but in terms of design, in terms of how they are architecturally put together, at the very least, they're always very impressive to me. And in this case, for example, in their self-winding movements, I always love the contrast between the barleycorn guilloche decoration of the 22 karat gold weight with the circular Geneva waves decoration of the bridge plates. I think that's a great interplay. That's a beautiful, beautiful look. And this is a watch that actually sold for 81,900, once again, including the buyer's premium. I'm sending the link, by the way. So if you want to draw my attention to any particular lot, feel free to send it in with a super chat, and I will make sure to do a deep dive and go into further historical and horological detail about the particular model. Bezels is here. Ozzy reminds everyone to upvote. I appreciate you, my friend. I want to also send out the link to his channel, which, by the way, just so you guys know, is and has always been on the featured channels. So I don't always post the link to Aussie Expats channel. I should be more considerate of that. But I try to do it whenever his name comes up, whenever he's here. But even when he's not here, you know, he has always been consistently one of the featured channels on this platform. So I hope we are on the same page. Hans Knees and Toes, lovely to see you here. Basil's, Jake Brooks says, preach. I think the new CEO has a big big job to do. They can service pieces like the Millenary and UTM. Look, I think Audemars Piguet is a very complicated brand. There's a lot to Audemars Piguet that goes well beyond what they foreground and what they sometimes, to their own detriment, focus on in terms of their marketing, in terms of their self-image, in terms of their self-presentation. Audemars Piguet, for example, is one of those brands, in fact, that in their workshops actually service not only their discontinued models, but also certain Valet de Joux brands that have gone extinct, right? Because the core of the company still has a lot of respect for the artisans that have made these watches for centuries, where no one was paying attention except for very privileged and very rich people, perhaps. And no one was buying Royal Oaks in the 20th century except for Italians and Germans, and maybe the Japanese, so let's not get carried away. Some people, even within the company, may have forgotten what Audemars Piguet is about. But we were just talking about the rhetoric of decline when it comes to civilization and when it comes to the moments of crisis, and we're all done. We'll never reel back from this. It will never get any better. I won't go into that when it comes to Audemars Piguet. I think Audemars Piguet is, if you ask me from my perspective, it is going through an interregnum. It is going through a tulip kind of era or age. So they are enjoying this sort of affluence. They're enjoying this sort of richness and material wealth that is itself not substantiated. And when times get tougher, they will learn to return to their own roots. They will learn to look back to their heritage. And thankfully, there are a lot of people within the corporate structure of that company even who have been great custodians of that. At the highest level, perhaps, at the level of the CEO, where you have a 60-year-old man who is trying to pretend that he's still in his 20s, you might not get that image. But there are so many people in that brand that have hold on very tight to what makes Audemars Piguet Audemars Piguet. And I'm not even talking about the watchmakers. I'm sure they are so much different than what you see when you think of Audemars Piguet in the mainstream. So don't lose hope. They can always service anything that Audemars Piguet has historically produced. There's no doubt about that. They might charge you an arm and a leg. That's another issue, but they will always be capable of that. If there's one watchmaker between the big three, it's Audemars Piguet that will never fail to deliver on that account. So 84, this is a 5270R, a beautiful pink gold perpetual calendar with moon phase at 6 o'clock. And there are also these circular apertures, circular openings in the lower half of the watch that serve in one case as a day-night indicator and in the other a leap year indicator. And this is um, sort of the more muscular version of the 3970. And even in a certain sense, you might say one of the more one of the bolder iterations of a perpetual calendar chronograph in Patek Philippe's archive. I think the arachnoid spider-like stepped lugs are a particularly beautiful touch. And actually for a 41 millimeter case, I think it wears fairly well. And if there is ever a case to be made for having, no pun intended again, a larger case for a watch, it's when it comes to these sorts of complicated watches, right? When you have a lot of data to display on the face of the watch, it might actually make sense to have a larger dial and therefore a larger case. And 5270R is certainly that kind of a watch, right? You have a perpetual calendar and a chronograph and a moon phase. You also have a day-night indicator. You also have the leap year indicator that is spread out rather than squeezed into another subdial. So it actually does make sense, visually speaking and aesthetically speaking, to have a slightly larger case, a watch that has more of a presence. So 5270 was, of course, the one that was built on Patek's in-house caliber CH29. And as you can see, this is Patek Philippe seal movement as well from year 2015, and lot 84 actually sold for $151,200. Number 86 is again a fantastic execution of the Audemars Piguet perpetual calendar. These ones are really beautiful. Again, I think it's quite masterful in terms of watchmaking to fit into what is essentially an Audemars or Royal Oak jumbo extra thin case, a perpetual calendar movement. And this is what Audemars Piguet at least used to do, right? You know, the 39 millimeter case is basically a great representative of this. And this is reference 25554 BA. I'm sorry, I don't know why I ended up here. That's lot 86 and Audemars Piguet Royal Oak perpetual calendar. Relatively early version, as you can see. It doesn't yet have the leap year indicator, and it's very bare bones in a way. And I kind of like it for that reason. I feel the leap year indicator is, of course, quite useful on some level. It adds another layer to the complication, which I appreciate from a nerdy outlook. But I think aesthetically, the Royal Oak dial in this 4 subdial configuration simply looks better and less crowded, especially in the 39 millimeter case, without the leap year indicator, which they usually insert into the subdial in 12 o'clock. So this is lot number 86, 25554BA is the reference number, and that was sold for $138,600. There we go. Now, this is a watch. Speaking of the current image of Audemars Piguet and how I detest a lot of things about it. So when I came across this watch, I really wanted to hate it. I really wanted to. I tried my best not to like it, but honestly, this was an amazing piece. I mean, it's stunning. It's not for me. I'm not necessarily enamored by ceramic as a material for case, bracelet, or anything really. I'm not really taken by that. But I have to say it wears really well. It's very blue, so certainly not for me aesthetically either. But it is really a beautiful piece, down to the aventurine backgrounds of that moon phase. It's a piece that has a lot of extra detail, and of course, in this most recent generation of the perpetual calendars, not only do you have a leap year indicator lodged right into the month indicator here at 12 o'clock, you also have on the Rejo a weekly calendar as well, which again, it's just a cool little detail, cool little complication. This particular piece was apparently a special order, and has an example of the kind of work that AP can still accomplish in terms of customizing rotors. That's one of the most subtle and still the most powerful flexes, I think, that exist in the horological realm. If you have a Royal Oak with an exhibition case back, you owe it to yourself to order some sort of customized rotor. You get to keep the original as well. And this gentleman actually ordered right out of the gate something with Tour d'Eiffel, something with the Eiffel Tower. And I think it is a very interesting and elegant touch, and contrasts in almost a diametrically opposite way with the general appearance of the watch. I mean, people have all sorts of different opinions about the Eiffel Tower as well. I find it horrifyingly beautiful. I have to say. I remember the first time I went to Paris, there were things that I had dreamt up, and therefore there were things that underwhelmed me a great deal. Seeing Mona Lisa in the museum was one of those things. I found it one of the most underwhelming experiences in my entire life. I still love the painting and all the nuance of it, don't take me wrong, but seeing it in person was really not what I expected it to be, what I made it out to be. But walking up to the Eiffel Tower was everything that I expected and more. I mean, there's even, especially, I think I arrived right when it was getting dark, right when the sun was setting. And there was a moment where just looking at the structure, I felt like I was being crushed by the weight of that steel, which shows you really the visual power of a certain kind of modernist architecture, right? It's not really simply trying to create a place for a human being to dwell and inhabit. But as Frederick Jameson has said, it is trying to almost uh, assert the power of the larger overarching structure upon the insignificant individuality of a single human being. And Eiffel Tower is that kind of structure. I think it was Roland Barthes who said, "I love taking my meals in the Eiffel Tower because that's one place in Paris where I don't have to suffer the sight of it." So people are all over the place when it comes to their appreciation of the Eiffel Tower, but I think it is a beautiful structure in its own way, and it was a nice surprise to see it represented in this way on the rotor of this Audemars Piguet perpetual calendar in blue ceramic, lot 88A 26579 CS. This is a piece that sold for $441,000. Eric L says, wife bought me a titanium and ceramic bracelet years ago. It hit the ground on a shortfall and it was game over, man. Not surprised, but anyway, I mean, certainly not a half a million watch. 89 was another ceramic. This is 26585 CE, which is the black ceramic version of the perpetual calendar. And it also features, in this case, an open-worked dial. And again, this is the strength of Philips's curation, really, because I think it was Christie's that had, or was it Sotheby's? I think it was Sotheby's that in the recent New York auction, they had an open worked 26585. So same watch, same reference as this, but Philips had that and the one in blue ceramic. So it's really amazing what they put together, and it comes as no surprise where when they end up selling everything they have on offer, which is what they call a white glove sale or white glove auction. So it's always interesting. So lot 89 sold for $302,400. That was again on December 11th. The Grand Complication, which actually is not only a perpetual calendar, but also a split-second chronograph, as well as a chiming watch, right? As well as a minute repeater. And in this particular example, you have actually a Royal Oak in white gold. I really like it when the moon phase ends up on the at 12 o'clock. I feel like, it really puts that romantic complication at the center of the watch, which is something I really, really appreciate. But yes, this is kind of the king of all kings. It's a little bigger, of course, than the average Royal Oak perpetual calendar. Again, it's also a split-second chronograph, but more importantly, it needs to, of course, not only accommodate, but it needs to be built to actually achieve what would be the best possible chiming watch, since it's a minute repeater as well. And you can see here the gong as well as the hammers inside that complication. This was a 25-8-65, and as you see, it actually went for less than the blue ceramic perpetual calendar. Shall we say, the new owner of lot 90 got themselves a bargain. It sold apparently for $327,600. Again, if you want, feel free to direct my attention to anything else that I'm skipping over. And if you simply want to join the discussion and become part of the panel, feel free to click the link. But there are a lot of interesting Grand Seikos that I'm simply skipping over here. There was a Snoopy, Silver Snoopy Award 50th anniversary specifically. This is also a beautiful watch. It has just the right amount of blue on the dial, if you ask me, which is, of course, something that is echoed in the tachometer bezel as well as the sailcloth strap that usually accompanies the watch, that originally accompanies the watch, I should say. And it's really an extremely wearable and beautiful piece. Let me see if I actually have my wrist shot of it at hand. I haven't uploaded it to YouTube yet, so it will have too much glare probably, but at least you can get a general idea of how it looks on the wrist. Oof, it's I apologize about the quality of the picture, but it will be better once I finally upload it as a short on YouTube. Yeah, that was the Silver Snoopy Award. It is also lot 101, an Omega Speedmaster from 2 years ago, and that sold for $34,020. There was a Chronomètre Bleu at lot 104. I'm not going to say it went for cheap at all. Don't take me wrong. But I think there's an object lesson um, in the final hammer price, which again, in this case, includes a premium when it comes to this particular watch. You remember just at the beginning of this year, this watch was so in demand, so unavailable, so hyped up that at least in certain listings, the range had started creeping up to 6 digits. Nowadays, it can easily be gotten for 70,000. Nowadays, in an auction where you have all the heavyweights, all the high rollers flying into New York from all over the place. And believe me, for some people in that room, $75,000 is not a lot of money. So it's fine. You know, they will take a risk. They will take a punt, so to speak. So even in that sort of company, for an FB Journe Chronomètre Bleu, which is a very desired watch, but a watch that is still in production, a watch that should still ideally be available, you see how the market is significantly hit. And this is going to trend further and further down. A blue ceramic AP perpetual calendar, which is an extremely rare thing, which you really, most of us can't really buy from Audemars Piguet, even if we had the purchasing power, that can still go for incomprehensible amounts, because that's a very rare watch, right? A George Daniels will still go for millions of dollars just because it's unavailable. It's never going to be made again. It's done. It's extremely limited. Everything basically made by George Daniels is technically pièce unique, right? You know, technically one of a kind. I mean, it's an handmade product. It's an artisanal product. Though those kinds of watches will always command a certain kind of value, but something that is produced in relatively large numbers, which you might take a fine point and say an FB Journe watch is not actually produced in any significant number. I will agree to disagree. But most importantly, you are already seeing how much even quote unquote hype watches are affected by the downturn in the market. And lot 104 is the object lesson. It's an FB Journe Chronomètre Bleu that sold for $75,600. Junior Johnson, so nice to see you, man. Welcome to the channel. Welcome. 105 is one of my favorite watches of all time when it comes to time only. I'm a huge fan of Roger Dubuis from this particular period. These are not only chronometer certified and Geneva seal watches, but they're also watches that come from the observatory with the bulletin. So the highest of all high chronometric standards. And this particular sympathy or sympathy model is actually one of those earlier ones where you have that unique shape of the case reflected in the dial as well as the crystal. So again, it might sound like something crazy when I say the person who got this watch may have gotten themselves a deal. But I think getting this pink gold Roger Dubuis Sympathie with these beautifully sharp Dauphine hands and the Breguet numbers, a relatively early piece, at least early enough that it preserves that unique shape for the dial as well as the crystal. To get that piece, including the buyer's premium for $25,000, I think is a pretty decent deal. That was lot 105, and it comes, of course, as a full set, as you can see, including tag, certificate of origin, extra crystal, as well as the presentation box. This is a watch that I posted on YouTube today. I think it's a modern classic, and it's a piece that they had to remove from the alligator strap when they were crossing the border. So here it is on my wrist. This is an FP Journe Tourbillon Sovereign with remontoire d'égalité and with seconde morte, the dead seconds, as is said, the jumping seconds, whatever you would like to call it. So it has the constant force mechanism in the remontoire d'égalité that basically ensures the accuracy of the movement by that preserves the accuracy of the movement by sustaining the same amplitude second by second. That's dead second remontoire, right? It's really a beautifully balanced design. I think the main dial and the tourbillon cage are perfectly proportioned, and the running seconds in the middle provides an extra attraction right there where you would traditionally have the 6 o'clock. So 103, which is an FP Journe Tourbillon Sovereign from right around 2006, when they had already changed from brass to pink gold movements, as well as increased the size of the tourbillon from 38 to 40 millimeters. I think they're a little larger now, but 40, as you had seen on my wrist, is still extremely wearable. So this is truly a modern classic and a very remarkable watch. 108 sold for $289,800. I particularly like that taupe dial color as well. Chronomètre Résonance, again in platinum, right next to it in lot 109. again with an early iteration of the pink gold movement and a Salmon dial, sold for 315,000, including the buyer's premium. The George Daniels anniversary watch, again, we were just talking about this, which is 9 out of a 35, since the anniversary model was introduced on the 35th anniversary of George Daniels's invention of the coaxial escapement. And it's really, really a gorgeous watch to the extent that I didn't only not mind, but very much celebrated when Benzinger, Kai Benzinger, came out with his GAP 1 or GAP 1 watch, which he produced in collaboration with, of course, Hapling 2. Hapling 2 provided the movements, and that watch, of course, looks very much in terms of the dial design like George Daniels's anniversary watch. And I think that's a very elegant watch as well. I know it got a lot of flack for that reason, but the George Daniels anniversary is such a different segment of a watch that it's hard to criticize people for producing similar watches to it. Off center at 5 o'clock, you have the running seconds. At noon, you have the power reserve. You have also a pointer date on a sub dial at 7 o'clock. And finally, you have the hours balancing on an upward facing crescent almost. And they're laid out on a track which has a finish that is called Breguet frosting as well, this sort of radial brushing. And of course, George Daniels, having written literally the book on the art of Breguet, whenever he made a watch, he basically out-Breguet in terms of the kinds of finishes he used on the dial and the case, in terms of the variety and mastery of guilloche details and decorations he put on the dials. I mean, it's truly one of a kind, and I don't think anyone can replicate that attention to detail, that kind of individualized and minute care that went to an example of a watch like this. Look at the execution of the stepped bezel as well. I mean, everything about this watch is really, really something special, even though at first sight it might look a very simple and even outmoded kind of design. But it's very special, down to that purple color of the kiln fired screws on the back, right, which sets it apart from almost every other watch brand, right, that settles with a blue color, which is very elegant, which is very classic, but also very predictable. So why do that, right? Let's do something different that perhaps echoes, but also differs slightly from the rubies that we use on the movement. It's really a very special thing. Simple but beautiful. in the same way that Philippe Dufour's Simplicité watches are so desirable, so are George Daniels's, except George Daniels is unfortunately, he has already passed away, and his watches are for that reason even more rare and even more limited and exclusive. So lot 110 actually sold for $816,500. That was a piece, one of 35 from 2014 in 18 karat yellow gold. We were talking about the Rolex 19,000, and we have talked quite a bit about some unique day dates in the past. This is the Oyster Quartz day date with the integrated bracelet version of the Oyster bracelet, which I'm a big fan of, actually. I also love the integrated version of the President bracelet as well, but the Oyster really goes well with the stainless steel here. And so does the domed bezel, actually, interestingly, which I usually never really like on a Datejust or a day date. But since Oyster Quartz is really a different genre, and in stainless steel, the watch has a certain sportier feel, I really don't mind. Oyster Quartz, by the way, were the models in the 70s and 80s, and they had a slightly longer lifespan after that as well. These were Rolex's answer, one of Rolex's responses to the quartz crisis, which led them to collaborate with some other Swiss brands in innovating on quartz circuits. So Rolex had these integrated bracelet designs for both of their Datejust and day dates, as well as some other unique Rolex models that remain collectible, whether we are talking about the Texan or King and Queen Midas. But here is an example of an Oyster Quartz day date, which was in its President version, so to speak, was worn by none other than Michael Caine. His personal watch, of course, was sold at Bonhams London earlier this year. This is a piece that is understood to have been delivered to a watchmaking school in Geneva by Rolex. And the reason it is in this quote-unquote pedestrian stainless steel is because this is how Rolex oftentimes supplied watchmaking schools with relatively cheaper, more affordable models that they can practice on, that they can hone their watchmaking and repair skills on. So this is, of course, ultra rare. Great examples of Oyster Quartz day dates and even Datejusts are becoming more and more expensive with each passing day. A stainless steel day date is already quite a rare thing. I think this was a great buy for whoever bit the bullet and raised their paddle. Lot 116 sold for $44,100. That was a Rolex reference 19,000, a stainless steel Rolex Oyster Quartz day date. Next up, we have at lot 119 a Rolex Oyster Cosmograph, a big red Daytona with the bracelets, guarantee, and presentation box. A really beautiful watch in that traditional quote-unquote panda configuration with black chronograph registers against a silver dial. And this is something seemingly retailed in Zermatt, Davos in 1986. Zermatt, as you know, is a ski resort town. It's also home to the Matterhorn Peak, which, if I'm not mistaken, is still the highest point in continental Europe. I think it's the highest peak in continental Europe. But there we are. There is also a Rolex dealer, at least in May 1986, there was. And this Rolex Daytona 6265 sold for $100,800 just last week here in New York. This very early series of Pateks 3940, really a marvelous thing when you think about it. Once again, I'm always much more impressed by smaller cases when it comes to complicated watches because it simply requires more skill. Not only designing, but deploying these sorts of complicated calibers in a tighter space. I mean, that's simply a fact. And when it comes to this particular watch, the 3940, it is actually Patek's first perpetual calendar that is built on caliber 240. And caliber 240 famously is the micro rotor caliber that was designed by one Monsieur Barret, who worked for Universal Watches, but who was ultimately recruited by Patek Philippe and designed for them the famous caliber 240. Gérard Barret again is the name, and I don't think they thought that a micro rotor caliber could actually power a perpetual calendar at the time, but it did, and 3940 is standing proof for it, and it's a very elegant watch with a traditional 3 sub-dial display of beautifully expressed enamel moon phase and the leap year indicators, as well as the 24-hour AM PM day and night indicator, beautifully sunk in to the 2 sub dials there at 3 and 9 o'clock. I even love the font of this particular watch. To me, it really inspires everything that was classical, everything that was right, everything that was nearly perfect about Patek at a certain point in time, and maybe for the last time in a way. Mid 80s is just a beautiful period. And this is 3940 from the first series in this beautiful 18 carats yellow gold case with a stepped bezel. I mean, look at that moon phase again very quickly. And this watch sold for $90,720. 124. It's a beautiful, beautiful perpetual calendar. Again, a much more, much newer, of course, in this officer style case with an hinged case back. Of course, 5059 is a model that expresses the same function, same complication in a very different manner, with very different aesthetic. In a way, even with the Breguet numerals, this is and even if it is also a 36 millimeter case, I think this is really by definition, almost by nature, a more sporty watch. I think the inclusion of luminous material on the dial might have something to do with it. The unique thing here about this watch is the dial color, of course, which I like calling khaki green, but I think it's just called brown in Patek terms, kind of a brown sunburst. But really, in real life, in to the naked eye, it looks so much more than simply a brown dial. It's hard to explain it except to say again, it has this sort of khaki shade to it from many different perspectives. And of course, this particular model also has that retrograde date indicator that is laid out in a downward facing crescent at the center of the dial. This is lot 124 that sold for $264,600. Thank you, Bezos. I appreciate you, man. Thank you. That's a thumbs up. Thank you so much. 199. Again, let me send everyone the link if you want me to pay attention to any particular watch. Feel free to send a super chat or a super sticker to direct my attention, or you can simply join the panel and help me talk about some of these watches, help me introduce some of these watches. Maybe you have something else or something different to say. 3970 is again for me a great representation of that quote-unquote vintage Patek Philippe or signature Patek Philippe, you may want to say. You have um, a perpetual calendar chronograph in a relatively conservative case size of 36 millimeter in diameter. Of course, you have here not only a perpetual calendar, but also um, a chronograph. You have a case with these subtly stepped lugs that droop ever so slightly at the ends. So something that is maybe a little more dynamic, a little sportier, even in a subtle way in terms of design. You have a model here with an exhibition case back, but um, in the good old tradition of Patek, in a bygone time, they're also supplied with a snap-on solid case back, just so you know for sure that they have not cheated you out of that material. This is a 3970E in pink golds. One of the most no nonsense and elegant expressions of what Patek Philippe does best, which is complications in the most beautiful and most useful way for an elegant watch that can be worn for the everyday. And here, of course, in a tradition that they kept up until 5970, the piece is built on the base of a Lemania CH27 chronograph movement, which is here assembled, finished, and regulated up to the standards, up to the highest standards expected by the hallmark of Geneva. This 3970E at lot 125 sold for $138,600. At lot 127, you have 2499, which is actually the successor to 1518, which happens to be the first serially produced perpetual calendar chronograph by Patek Philippe that was introduced in 1901. 2499 was actually introduced in 1950s, and for its time it was a very bold watch in this kind of oversized case, in a way, in 37 and a half. You can see these, again, subtly stepped lugs, and you see as well that this is an example that is double branded too, retailed by House. Again, a very beautiful piece, extremely desirable, even without the double branding, with the co-signature, which is something that has become really popular and desirable lately. But again, a beautifully balanced design by Patek Philippe, something that is reflected even by the material of the hands for hours and minutes, as well as the running seconds and the pointer dates that match all the other fixtures of the dial, as well as the yellow gold of the case, which is contrasted by the centrally deployed chronograph hand, as well as the 30-minute totalizer, which not only harmonize between each other in this heat blued configuration, but also echo with that night sky background of the moon phase as well. A really beautiful classic piece again by Patek Philippe in 2499. That was lot 127 from 1973, which sold for 792,300, including the buyer's premium. The classic world time, which was introduced in 1939, was produced for about 15 years, and in many ways announced Patek Philippe even before the perpetual calendar in 1526, and the perpetual calendar chronograph in 1518. This was the model that announced Patek to the global world as a leader in complications. Of course, this was a movement, a base, an invention that they got from Louis Cotier, who has given them not only this version of Heure Universelle, world time, but also the later iterations of it, as well as that travel time complication, which allows the hour hands to jump back and forth with the help of two pushers placed on the left flank of the case. 1415 is, of course, a really artistic piece, more than a utilitarian one, I would say. By today's standards, is positively minuscule. In this case, the city's ring is actually a rotational bezel. You would see it in later iterations of Patek Philippe. You will see the city's ring included on the dial of the watch, right? Like in the 2523, which had double crown, right? The crown at 3 o'clock to set the time, and the crown at 9 o'clock to actually rotate the city's ring. But a 1415, of course, independent of its size and perhaps lack of utility according to contemporary standards, is in the world of vintage Patek Philippe still a very important and collectible piece. The teardrop lugs are, I think, one of the most beautiful aspects of the watch, including the unique expression of day and night here in terms of the 24-hour ring with the Arabic numerals that has at noon a depiction of the sun, and at midnight a depiction of the moon. Truly a watch for the romantic. At lot 128, the Patek Philippe reference 1415 has sold for $151,200. There was a unique version of Anderson Genève jumping hour watch at lot 133, a reference 634. This was pièce unique. One second, guys. I have to figure out what's going on. Anyway, so we're back. Yes, good to see your remarks that 2 decades ago, a 1415 was the most expensive watch sold in the world. That's a record that has been broken time and again, but we don't need to belabor the point. This is a beautiful Anderson Genève watch that is again a unique piece, a one-of-a-kind piece, a pièce unique, made for this particular charity section of the auction in Time for Arts. The dial, as far as I know, in this case is a tapisserie design, something that is applied by the pantograph. The hour dial in this subsidiary iteration, subsidiary configuration, has a guilloche decoration, however. And parts of that decorative design is reflected on the winding rotor of the watch as well. And again, as you can see, this is their proprietary blue gold, finished in electric purple that you can see on this particular ring that is engraved in the back. And that matches the finish of the dial as well. This is a very beautiful piece, a very unique piece, one of a kind. In many ways, a lot of the Anderson Genève pieces are one of a kind. I don't think, they offer you all kinds of different configurations and finishes, even with these kinds of editions. We were just talking about World Times and just talked about Anderson Genève, so it makes sense to bring up their recent collaboration with Asprey. It's an amazing brand that needs to be highlighted a lot more, and I'm glad they became part of this charity portion of the auction, and I hope that helped them shine some light on the brand as well, because lot 133, which is a gorgeous jumping hour watch in platinum that is made in a one-of-a-kind version by Anderson Genève, sold for $56,700. Next to it, at lot 134, De Bethune DB25 VTI S3, De Bethune Starry DB25 Stradivarius with this unique expression of the constellation at the center of the dial, sold for $88,200. Again, this is one of the watches that I truly love. I truly admire from afar, even though I always know that it's not for me. And I'm not even talking about the price points, but also in terms of taste. But I've always appreciated the way that De Bethune takes these almost sci-fi like elements and blends them with very recognizable visual codes of traditional watchmaking, and the result is always very striking, something very innovative and traditional at once, something that can appeal to someone who appreciates watchmaking arts, and something that can appeal to someone who is looking for a piece that's very unique, that expresses a different kind of character, and that makes a very unique kind of statement. I like the way they use titanium as a luxurious material in this mode of mirror polish, as well as the unique finishing and detailing of their cases. I love the way they design their movements. Again, very sci-fi when you think about it. I don't even need to make the obvious reference. I'm sure you already see it. And ultimately, really a beautiful, beautiful piece at 134. Beautiful inside and out, very artfully designed and finished, again, front and back. This De Bethune DB25 Stradivarius sold for $88,200. Exactly. Star Trek meets Breguet, De Bethune. Exactly what I was saying. You caught it really well, Orange Hand. An 1815 chronograph by A. Lange und Söhne in white gold with a white dial here, which I actually like a lot. I do prefer, really by far and wide, their flagship flyback chronograph, the Datograph, to the 1815. But in this, no-nonsense expression of it in white gold, with a black against white dial with heat-blued hands, the piece really shines in its beautiful simplicity. And lot 137, which is an 1815 chronograph by A. Lange und Söhne. You might say 1815 is more traditional, more conservative, in a way more inspired by traditional pocket watches, whereas Datograph is a little more edgy, a little more Teutonic, if you know what I mean. And if I may say so, a little sportier as well, a lot of times. And not only because it has some luminous material on the dial, but also because of elements like the big date, the power reserve, as well as in at least the most recent iteration, the case size and thickness as well. But at lot 137, we had an example of the A. Lange und Söhne 1815 chronograph, a relatively early example. I think Lange debuted the model on the 5th anniversary of the datograph, so this should be 2004, and this is a piece that was within the first 5 years of 1850's life as a model, sold for $50,400. $5070, which has similar design elements, but really is a giant compared to A. Lange und Söhne's 1815 chronograph. 1815 has a case diameter of 39.5, whereas 5070, which was Patek's late successor to 1463, and Patek's last generation of hand-wound chronographs that were built on that Nouvelle Lemania CH27 base before they switched to in-house calibers for the first time with 5170. Because of their oversized cases, I think they attract a particular kind of attention. This 5070G, which is to say the 42 millimeter hand-wound Patek chronograph in white gold, sold for $83,160. Next to it is a black label FB Jaune, in this case an even more unique piece, Chronomètre Optimum, a boutique edition, absolutely pristine in pink gold and everything that comes with it. And as you can see, it has a remontoire d'égalité, which is a 1-second remontoire that allows the watch to display the deadbeat seconds on the back. It additionally has this running seconds, has this petite seconde at 9 o'clock on the face of the watch. And Chronomètre Optimum is, of course, also a watch that has FB Jaune's twin wheel escapement, right? And this is the deadbeat second display on the back of the case that is moved by the 1-second remontoire, which allows the movement to sustain the same amplitude and thus preserve its accuracy over the time of its charge. Again, beautiful architecture of the movement, no matter what one may think of its finishing. I think it's just as pleasing to the eye from the back as it is from the front. So this FP Journe black label chronomètre optimum, which is deadbeat seconds piece with a remontoir d'égalité and the double wheel escapement. And at launch 140, it sold for $277,200. At 141, you have again a very unique Audemars Piguet automatic tourbillon that was made for the 25th anniversary of the model of the Royal Oak. As you can see, this is a model that wanted to replicate as the tourbillon cage the iconic octagonal shape, and for purposes of symmetry, eliminated also the crown on the side of the watch. It's again, this is design, right? This is AP design, not code 1159. This is when they actually cared. This is when they actually wanted to introduce elements of design to a watch that had at least some eye towards aesthetic expression, that had at least some utility in terms of the visual aesthetics of the watch. This is 25831 ST, the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak automatic tourbillon that was released for the 25th anniversary of the Royal Oak, with a salmon dial and a tourbillon cage that echoes with the octagonal shape of the bezel. I think one detail that I want to note, and that I don't think is actually intentional, is the way that the white gold bolts have patinated so beautifully, as if to match the shade of the salmon dial. What a wonderful touch it has ended up being, even if it's not intentional. This is a very unique watch and a very expressive watch that not only gives you a very unique horological gift on the watch, but also pays a great tribute to the history of what has become a very iconic model. And lot 141 sold for $189,000. Another 5270, again, this is the 41 millimeter version of Patek's perpetual calendar chronograph that was built on their in-house caliber, CH29. In this case, you have white gold, which has these blackened dial fixtures that I think contrast really wonderfully. That is a lot 142, which sold for $113,400. I think this auction in particular was a Royal Oak extravaganza again. I'm sure they had so many beautiful models, especially in these perpetual calendars, that they didn't want to simply squeeze into that Royal Oak at 50 um, auction that they held in Geneva earlier in the year. So ultimately, um, that might be one reason as to why we have so many beautiful and valuable um, Royal Oak watches in this particular auction. Um, and here is yet another relatively recent and absolutely new, in fact, Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar at lots 144 in 41 millimeter in an interesting execution of two-tone again with titanium and platinum. I really like it. I love the aventurine background of the moon phase as well as the realistic depiction of the moon. I think it fits with the contemporary expression of the watch. The tapering interlinks as well as the octagonal bezel is in platinum with the rest of the watch in titanium, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. I have told you many times before that I somehow like it better when the moon phase is at 12 o'clock. I feel like visually it puts it really at the center of the watch and enhances the beauty of it. I find that a lot more tasteful than simply enlarging it for the sake of it. And again, this is a watch that is perhaps at 41 millimeters, but that has some justification with everything that is displayed on the dial to be a large watch, right? It's not 41, 42, 44 millimeters for no reason. It is actually trying to express and lay out a certain kind of complication, and therefore perhaps has more reason, more justification than the average time only or less complicated piece. This is a 26586 IP titanium platinum Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar with moon phase, leap year indicator, as well as a day and night indicator, which sold for $239,400. At 145, you have a Longines skin diver, super compressor in this case, that says more about the case than anything. This is a model that they have been inspired by and they have revived. Of course, the crowns are, one of the crowns are to set that inner rotational bezel. I think this is a gorgeous watch, both in its modern and contemporary iteration. And here the vintage version at lot 145 with the reference number 7150-1 sold for $10,080. Radiomir Type B Panerai sold for $63,000 at lot 148. Vintage Omega reference 987, which is a multimeter scale 2-register classic chronograph from 1947 by Omega, with a jumbo case for the period. Again, it's a 38 millimeter. That sold for $22,680. A really gorgeous piece again. At lot 150, 1665, a double red Sea Dweller. Again, a very early example of it that has aged and patinated so beautifully and so cohesively. Sold for $98,280. Man, oh man. This is really an absolute grail for me in the world of vintage Rolex. And every time an example like this sells for this kind of price, I get dejected. But perhaps one day I will be at that level. Who knows? This is lot 150, an early example of Rolex double red Sea Dweller reference 1665, which sold for $98,280. $3971E, again a Patek Philippe perpetual calendar chronograph with a sapphire case back. Archival extract as well as the presentation box from 1989, sold for $113,400 at lot 152. A 530, which is an oversized version of another iconic Patek Philippe chronograph, 130. 530 is basically the oversized version of it. This is lot 153 from year 1948 with a 36.5 millimeter case. $176,400 was the hammer price, including the premium. $5711, stainless steel Patek Philippe Nautilus, sold for 6 digits at lot 156, $100,800. A 5905P, the platinum annual calendar with a flyback chronograph function, sold for with this ink blue dial, sold for $79,380 at lot 158, and at lot 157, I want to say, at lot 158, a 5712G-001, which is the white gold version of the Nautilus moon phase, the Nautilus with the asymmetric dial, the Nautilus with the micro rotor caliber 240, sold for $107,100. 116520, 6-digit Rolex Daytona, all in stainless steel, including the bezel. The first reference with Rolex's in-house caliber 4130, an example of that. Sold for $23,940. Again, that price includes the premium. A Hulk at 163, sold for less than $24,000 at lot 163. That's 116610LV for Lunette Verte. Less than 24,000. An early example of Rolex's 50th anniversary Submariner, which came to be known as the Kermit due to its green aluminum bezel insert. That is reference number 16610, sold for $27,720 at lot 165. 5512 with a gilt exclamation mark dial, sold for a little more than $30,000 at lot 166. At 167, a reference 6239, Cosmograph, Rolex Cosmograph Daytona with the Paul Newman exotic dial, sold for more than $200,000. At 168, military issued Tornek Rayvel TR900, which is again the version of the 50 Fathoms devised to win this military contract by the US distributor of Blancpain. As you know, this is the OG modern dive watch, designed by one Jean-Jacques Fichter, the Alexandrine Monsieur Fichter, who was at the time the CEO of Blancpain. And this piece at lot 168, which is a military issued example of that legendary piece of design, and that's pioneering diver watch, sold for $88,200. The historically significant Omega Speedmaster that was used in preparatory tests by NASA, apparently. So a moon watch that has itself, unfortunately, not made it to the moon, but was issued and delivered to NASA and used by them for tests, sold at lot 169 for $327,600. At lot 170, again, a nice example of a ruthenium series, FP Jaune, 1 of 99. This particular model is 2003 Octa jour et nuit, day and night. It's a gorgeous watch, and of course has that early version of the movement too. in platinum, 22 karat gold weights, contrasting with the brass bridges of the movement. This sold for $239,400 at 170 at lot 170. A lot of Jones performed really highly. I can't say the same about Richard Mille. You have 50th anniversary Royal Oak chronograph at lot 174. It's a reference number 26 to 40 with this rich green dial, which I think is one of the nicest dial colors that Audemars Piguet recently introduced. This is, of course, the 50th anniversary version with that special rotor. These chronographs are now in the 41 millimeter case, which might be preferable or not, depending on where you stand. But this 50th anniversary Royal Oak chronograph sold for $88,200 at lot 174. At lot 175, this is again one of those watches that must have made it here because they somehow barely couldn't make the cuts for the 50th anniversary edition. This is an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak perpetual calendar from the turn of the century. A really beautiful piece. I'm not saying that because it's in platinum in that traditional 39 millimeter case sizing, but also because it has that unique hammer chiseled Florentine finished so-called Tuscan dial, which is really one of the most gorgeous things that I've ever seen in this world of watches. And I had the pleasure of actually putting this watch on when I went to the preview, and it feels like an absolute dream on the wrist. It's an incredible watch. I mean, a platinum Royal Oak perpetual calendar is already quite special, but with this dial, it's really verging on that territory that it's possibly unique, as the auctioneers like to say. And it did not surprise, of course, at lots 175 and sold for almost $250,000. The actual hammer price, including the premium, was $226,800. And finally, at 177, you had the open-worked Royal Oak by Audemars Piguet, namely the reference 15407 ST, 15407 ST, 41 millimeter in steel. This is the Royal Oak double balance wheel. So once again, the open worked execution has at least an actual reason, because it exhibits that double balance wheel layout, double balance wheel expression of the movement. And this is really a gorgeous piece. I mean, again, I would you know, as much as it's a hype piece, I couldn't help but be taken by it. And this is again, this is a watch that I had a chance to try on, and I even if it's not as elegant um, as that perpetual calendar with the Tuscan dial, even if it's not as elegant and as rare as the 25820 PT, I have to say I was quite impressed by the 15407 ST as well, which is very, very striking indeed, with that double balance wheel. And again, it is another instance where having a centrally deployed second hand makes some sense, introduces some counterbalance to that exposed double balance wheel. And once again, you have some reason, some elements of surprise as you digress, as you deviate from the golden standard that is provided by the Royal Oak Jumbo, or the extra thin, as it's also called, since now in the land of giants with these 41 millimeter watches and bigger, even bigger Royal Oaks in Audemars Piguet's own catalog, of course, the 39 millimeter is no longer truly a jumbo case. So that brings us basically to the end of our presentation on the Philips auction. I'll finally present this $500,000 Patek Philippe 5976. This was the 40th anniversary flyback chronograph version of the Nautilus in a super duper jumbo case. It is a 44 millimeter piece, actually. And as you can see, it has baguette cut diamonds for the indices, which introduce a very attractive detail. I wish I could say the same about the commemoration of the 40th anniversary. I have always found that in these models to be a little too obtrusive, but it's there right under the branding, 1976, 40 in large font to 2016. And of course, at 6 o'clock, you have the concentric circles of the various chronograph registers and the date indicator at 3, of course. The date window, I should say. This is the 40th anniversary Patek Philippe Nautilus flyback chronograph in white gold, 5976/1G.001, factory sealed at lot 178. It actually sold for $504,000. So I will take a short break now. I want to leave you with perhaps something of an outlier that I did not present. And I'll be right back after I get a drink. It's been more than 2 hours, so please hit the like button if you have enjoyed this show, if you have learned something from it. Subscribe if you haven't. Here with watch content every day. And hey, I was here today earlier in the day too, so maybe even twice a day. I'm here for you guys. I'm really putting in the work, and I appreciate that you are here. I appreciate your support and presence. But if you want to contribute to the channel, you can always follow the queue in the crawling ticker. There are also links in the video description, as well as pinned there in the chat for PayPal, Cash App, and Patreon, which will actually, in Patreon, get back to you in terms of almost 100 or more links to watch deals in a monthly basis. And that's a service that I'm providing at this point at that introductory rate. It is going to increase. I am also going to provide more services to my loyal supporters. But if you get your foot in the door now, you will be able to grandfather yourself into the services next year, which will be at a higher rate. Junior Johnson, JJ, $2. Thank you, Basils and JJ. This is something I also appreciate. Again, you can always support the channel with super chats, ask your questions, send in your requests in terms of topics, in terms of your concerns, in terms of things that you want me to open up to discussion, whether on my own or with my fellow panelists. Whenever they drop by, you can always either super chat here or email me directly at lordhellespont@gmail.com. That's lordhellespont5@gmail.com. And you can see that address in the crawling ticker too. Let me get a drink and I'll be right. Okay, so the final stretch, basically, I have another 50 minutes or so feel free to just introduce different topics of discussion as you like, as you wish in the chats. Um, after the earlier broadcast, after the early show today, I had to run a few errands, and on my way back, I actually had a chance to drop by a few places. The highlight was, of course, the original New York City location of the Armory, which is a very tasteful men's store established by Mark Cho and Alan C. in Hong Kong, and they have been in New York for quite a while now. They have also recently opened an Upper East Side location. As you know, a lot of the reasoning behind Mark Cho's recent sale of a great chunk of his watch collection was to invest that money back into the Armory, back into his brand. And from the horological world, from our perspective, of course, there are a couple of reasons why the Armory is important. Of course, Mark Cho himself is a watch collector, is a recognized watch collector, and is someone who is an advocate for smaller watches as well, which is something that I personally appreciate, and above all for the casual boldness that he has in terms of expressing his own taste and preferences through his collection. In this particular case, of course, the other important thing is more and more recently, the Armory has been doing these collaborations with watch brands. I mean, they have been retailing watches and watch straps perhaps ever since they had a New York City outpost. They always have some Nomos Glashütte watches in stock, but in recent time, they have directly collaborated with certain brands to release those special edition, limited edition watches, and they were, at least in spirit, nicely represented in this original New York location in Duane Street. Hopefully, I will visit the Upper East Side location too before I leave. But there were these posters. I apologize for the glare. There's perhaps too much light in the space, which doesn't make it great for this sort of photography, but you can see here the Type 2 leather cut edition by Naoya Hida in collaboration with the Armory. And you can also see the H. Mosa Total Eclipse in these two editions, both in stainless steel, one in a sort of monochromatic application on the Vanta Black dial, and the other one with rose gold accents on the hands, the dial fixtures, as well as that Reho 2. And they had another diagram of that letter cut dial, Naoya Hida, for the Armory. It's really a very nice space. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful store. Maybe it's not a very large space, but it has a lot of tasteful elements, and certainly some beautiful clothes and accessories, as well as some great shoes and outerwear as well. Just a lot of tasteful stuff. It's a little expensive, but relatively speaking, considering how some of the Italian menswear brands are priced nowadays, the Armory seems like a bargain. I'm joking a little bit, of course, but honestly, some luxury products have completely gone, out of control in terms of their pricing. So the Armory suddenly doesn't seem so bad. And they might be due a price increase soon. So if you have been eyeing a product, this might be the right time to start looking into it. Not exactly, not exactly. So they're keeping, at least for now, they're keeping the downtown location which is on Duane Street, and they have had a pop-up in Upper East Side on Madison Avenue and 69th, I think. The pop-up closed, but apparently they opened a more permanent location um, off Madison Avenue on 69th Street. Um, I think essentially Mark Choi is looking into purchasing a piece of real estate in Upper East Side where he can have a permanent location. So they might be looking to move once again in Upper East Side, but from what I've been given to understand, they're keeping the downtown location, and of course keeping the locations in Hong Kong as well, uh, which have a life of their own, really, even though the selection of clothes are pretty much the same. The second place I visited was Material Good, actually, down. Um, and I just walked in. They have a great collection of pre-owned stuff, um, and always an exquisite collection uh, of Audemars Piguet. I think they have always had some sort of special relationship with Audemars Piguet. I'm not sure if they have a particular collaboration that is set in stone or anything, but a lot of the pieces, if not all of the Audemars Piguet pieces, were serviced by AP, and almost shrink wrapped in this particular way. And I had the chance to try a few of those. Again, the prices, if you ask me, are a little unrealistic, a little wishful, as I like to say, but really, I mean, it's this is a new thing to me, right? Where you have certain kinds of watch dealers that invest so much into the experience, into the space, um, that try to make everything seem brand new, new old stock, rather than presenting things as they are, with the charm and patina that vintage pieces, that pre-owned pieces accrue over time, and with everything that makes them so unique. Really, to me, I'm not impressed by shiny things. I'm not impressed by the decor you have in the retail space that you built. I'm somewhat impressed by the stock and selection, the inventory that that you manage to amass and curate. But at the end of the day, to me, pre-owned watches are pre-owned watches. They should represent a bargain, not some sort of exclusivity or um, a luxury resale kind of scheme that has long plagued handbags and whatever else. I see no reason to bring the same kind of experience, if you can call that an experience, into the world of wristwatches. But hey, Material Good is not an exception, but more a rule in these days, where you have a certain hegemony of watch dealers that are a little bit too drunk on their own sauce, that are a little bit too uh, too full of themselves, too much caught up in their own hype. I'm not going to name the usual suspects. There's no reason to give them any promotion, but material goods in a way is at the forefront of this sort of luxury resale experience when it comes to wristwatches, and that has a lot of nice things about it in terms of the inventory they have amassed, in terms of everything that they bring together in terms of the actual timepieces. But when it comes to substance, which I really mean in the strictest sense of it, in terms of the knowledge that people possess in the actual store, in terms of their ability to present these pieces to an actually informed customer, and in terms of having attractive pricing that does not have 100% premium on the current market value. There are certain things that are most certainly lacking. But hey, at least there were some very unique pieces that you don't see every day. And that is something to be appreciated always. Yeah, this is a model that I never understood why this model was not quite popular. This is actually one of the early Royal Oak offshores. It's in 39 millimeter in diameter. It's a very thick and hefty watch on the wrist, even in stainless steel. But in so many ways, it also preserves a lot of what is very elegant about the Royal Oak as a sports watch, and blends it together with certain details that have become part and parcel um, of the Royal Oak offshore aesthetic, like the rubber crown, for example. But as you can see, you have petite tapisserie pattern. The date is indicated on the perimeter of the dial with a pointer. You have small seconds at 6 and day of the week as well as the month in the manner of these two openings right under the Audemars Piguet branding. This is a little overpriced, if you ask me, but they believe they provide some special kind of value because of that recent servicing and the presentation, which makes the watch seem as if it were brand new, by all means. But this is a very underrated reference, 25807 in steel. I would highly recommend it, especially if you like watches that are a little bit thick. This is a beautifully functional and unique Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, and an early example of the offshore that has more to do with the legacy of the Royal Oak than um, the what offshore has become later in the 21st century. This was a great watch as well. You have a 25654, which is uh, an early perpetual Audemars Piguet Royal Oak perpetual calendar with a yellow gold case and bracelet and a white dial. That's a fantastic piece as well. Champagne dial of the same reference. Again, that makes it very uniform and almost monochromatic design, except for the moon phase indicator at 6 o'clock and the white gold bolts on the octagonal bezel, of course. But yes, for a lot of people, a visit to Material Good, if you're in New York City, if you're anywhere on the East Coast and you want to have a hands-on experience with a large variety of especially neo vintage, but also at times vintage and rare Audemars Piguet timepieces, that can be a unique experience. It's not every day that you find so many different examples and varieties of the Royal Oak in the same space. You see two examples of the 26120, both in pink gold on leather strap here, but one has a black dial and the other has silver or cream dial. These are the Royal Oak dual times, of course, of a bygone era in a way. Again, these, at least in the reduced size examples, these represent great deals, but not necessarily in this reference number. Still, interesting models to take a look at, interesting models to contemplate, this 26120. And here you have the same in steel. A lot of interesting chronographs. Again, in steel with a white dial, the dual time 26120. You have the Royal Oak concept. In titanium 26223. That is priced almost for $250,000, of course. But anyways, all of this is there, is available, and I have focused on the APs, of course, but there's so much more. A lot of vintage Rolexes that are relatively rare, if not exactly unseen. but also a lot of Pateks as well. Thank you, JJ. Take care, man. Junior Johnson, thank you so much. Thank you for being here in the first place. That's always appreciated. Um, before I could present it properly, there's another watch that just sold out. I was just a couple of days ago, I was focusing on this Jacques Bianchi dive watch, that um, Revolution watch presented in a limited edition. Apparently, it's already sold out, but I thought it was really a gorgeous iteration of JB 200 Meduse, as it's called in this particular way. Um, I think this was just a model that really encapsulated well the vibe, the feeling of a vintage inspired dive watch, um, while of course presenting a very um, details of it that are very unique, from the entirely graduated and fully luminous rotational bezel to the LHD configuration, left-hand drive configuration, that can be either worn on the right hand or on the left hand with without the crown intruding or obstructing any sort of movement that you might have with your hands. Um, but this watch sold out pretty quickly. Um, so I'm not sure if there is anything more to say. I think you either love or hate the diver in the middle of the watch, that is itself also luminous, and in fact in a different color that sets it apart from both the indices as well as the um, luminous material on the fully graduated bezel. I particularly like the crown guards that seem to really envelop the crown in a particular way uh, ob- without obstructing access to it. The 200-meter depth rating is, of course, entirely respectable for dive watch and as an everyday wearer, of course. And this particular model, again, um, went up for sale just yesterday in a limited edition of 150 pieces, and it sold out pretty quickly at a price of 1,060 euro. Um, Another thing that I wanted to mention before we close the beyond perhaps some of the new releases, was again some of the affordable watches that I have highlighted in the past few days, really, and that I want to draw attention to again. Um, we talked a little bit about the Unimatic, and as you know, the 99 piece edition that had a few more unique details, perhaps already sold out, but this bronze diver of the Modello 4 they produced in collaboration with Messina Lab is still available at $895, which I think is a very beautiful piece of design, very simplistic, almost rustic, but something that presents really a great contrast and a think of beauty in the interplay of that military / khaki green and bronze gilt kind of look of the case, which are of course complemented not only with the writing on the dial, but also the gilt tip of the seconds hand as well. I think this is a beautiful piece. Again, the material on the dial is super luminova, and it's given a kind of yellowed or creamy kind of look, but not in a way that's excessive, in a way that makes that Fortina look. And these are built on Swiss-made calibers, specifically Sellita SW200-1, which I think at this price point is the least you can expect, but at least that's what you're given. So that's something to be appreciated. This is the bronze diver that's the Italian brand Unimatic produced in conjunction with Messina Lab, and it's still available for sale at $895. Timex has come out with two new versions of their Giorgio Galli S1. One is what they call black onyx, so a blacked out version of their S1, offered at only about $25-30 off an upcharge than their usual stainless steel model. I quite like this particular look. I love the case design, which is a very very nice thing at this price point. Let me put it like that. I love the fact that the self-winding, well, the winding rotor of the automatic movements is matched to the PVD coated case. And while I'm on it, I do like the fact that this is a Timex with a self-winding movement. And I like the fact that it expresses this blacked out aesthetic that could make it a very wearable watch from anyone who embraces a goth lord kind of aesthetic to someone who likes wearing perhaps that sort of quasi-militaristic khaki green laden look, or someone who wears streetwear. I can easily see this on the wrist of a lot of different people. So I think it would make a great gift for the watch people and non-watch people in your life. And similarly, they also have PVD coated limited edition gold version of it that's yet a little more expensive at $495. I like the contrast between gold tone and black as much as I would myself shy away from anything that is gold plated, no matter the application. But this is an interesting enough watch. This is a watch that has a visual interest of its own. Really, I think these to me seem like great everyday wearers. Also at 38 millimeters, again, they can be worn on a variety of wrists, kind of a universal wearer and kind of a unisex watch for that reason. So this is another great stocking stuffer, as it were, that takes us beyond the usual suspects. And of course, we have the Seiko 5 GMT that's now widely available. And that is, of course, something you can get from your local authorized Seiko dealer, as well as the Seiko website, if I'm not mistaken, no? Yes or no? Where do they have the do they not have the GMT on the website? Maybe I'm missing something, or maybe they're actually out of stock on the website. That's always possible. But I'm pretty sure that this is a watch that you can easily get without much fuss or muss at your local authorized dealer for Seiko. I still love, of course, when it comes to Seiko 5s, and this is a piece that you can easily find on eBay for even cheaper. The Seiko SRPE 05, the king turtle, so to speak. I've never, honestly, when it comes to Seiko, I never had an issue with aluminum bezels and hardlex crystals, but I do appreciate that Seiko is clearly in touch with its own fans. It understands the modding community. It knows that they are a lot of times into these sorts of details, like a sapphire crystal, like a ceramic bezel. This is how people modify their own watches. So why not listen to them, right? Why not follow their wishes in terms of the original factory expression of the watch as well. I really love this watch, Seiko Prospects SRP 05, the King Turtle in green. I think it's a very unique watch, very wearable watch. As far as I know, the list price should be right under $600. But I think it goes on sale at Macy's website all the time. And you can see it here, for example, down to $446.25 from $600. And you can easily find it online in the usual suspects as well. There's always a lot of them on eBay, either unworn or slightly worn, that people list and that are even cheaper. I'm kind of a stickler when it comes to Seiko, even at the lowest price segments. If I have a Seiko, it has to be made in Japan. Again, it might be my personal problem, but this is something I paid attention to in my SRPE 05. This is something I paid attention to when I was getting my SKX 007 and 009. And this is something I paid attention to when I got this Seiko 5 as well. Again, you don't have to necessarily stand on ceremony here. You know, you are not really there's not much difference between JDM / made in Japan versions of the same references. But you know, if it matters to you, it matters. You know, a lot of what we care about, what we yearn for, what we aspire to when it comes to watches are not things that can be reasonably explained and accounted for. So this is my take. You know, if I'm getting a Seiko, it has to say made in Japan on the dial. It just doesn't make sense to me otherwise. Basil says Seiko websites are weird. There's a USA site and a Lux site. Same here. Basil says I look for Japan-made examples. Absolutely. Absolutely. By the way, I wanted to show a few things that I didn't have a chance to show off maybe on the channel before. I was in the new New York boutique of Chopard, which has an entire floor of watches with a full case of LUC as well, which I'm going to upload to the shorts section of the channel quite soon. But this is the new pine green dial for the Alpine Eagle in the pink gold case. I think this is a beautiful combination. Um, I also had a chance to right. I also had a chance to check out this beautiful thing. This is what they call the Chopard LUC Full Strike Tourbillon. It's one of those chiming watches that they built using monoblock sapphire technology, which basically means that they have a sapphire gong that is cut from the same piece as the crystal, which allows the watch to have a kind of resonance that is very unique and very uh, rare in the world of minute repeaters, in the world of chiming watches. I mean, um, there are minute repeaters that sacrifice the quality and warmth of the sound for volume. Uh, there are chiming watches that have a very warm sound, but are very low on volume. But somehow, this monoblock sapphire technology that LUC Chopard has perfected, in combination with these mirror polished stainless steel um, hammers, produces an incredible sound. I mean, I guess it sounds most like the clinking of glasses, right? When you are um, raising a glass in honor of something, celebrating something, saying cheers. Um, or maybe if you are trying to draw the attention of guests in a room, by clinking your utensil, maybe a knife to a champagne glass or something. Um, so it has a very nice ring to it, and it's quite loud, and at the same time very pleasing and warm. Um, an incredible piece. I mean, of course, we're talking about a watch that's $350,000, right? It better it better deliver something, and cook a dinner for two, and prepare your morning coffee as well while it's at it. But I think for a chiming watch, and again, I'm not an expert on this subject at all, even though I had a chance over time to listen to a lot of different chiming watches, but this is a really special one. And they have gone the extra length, of course, um, with the tourbillon as well. Um, and the full strike tourbillon is powered by a hand wound movement that allows it, not that you would need it, but that allows it at full charge to basically chime and articulate the longest sequence, which is, I put here 11:59. 12:59 would be even longer. And it can do that about 12 times, apparently, at full charge. You won't need that much charge anyways for a chiming watch, but it's there in this case. And the tourbillon itself, to resonate, no pun intended, with that monoblock sapphire technology, has this beautifully cut, transparent sapphire bridge as well. Um, and it's an extremely wearable piece as well, at 42 millimeters and a half. Just sits beautifully on the wrist. It's really impressive. Kind of makes you wish that you are, um, that one could afford these things, right? Um, yeah, I think that's it. Everything else I have somehow presented on the channel. This was the Tourbillon Sofran in platinum with the remontoir d'égalité and the deadbeat seconds. And that's it. And of course, this was earlier in the day before I had the chance to share an early show with you. Um, and this is the end for tonight. Again, thank you for your presence and support. We were together for about 5 hours today, 2 hours earlier in the day, 3 hours now, um, more than 5 hours really, because it was longer than 2 hours. And I was lucky enough to have El Famoso Profesor, the famous professor, on my side. And we had a little conversation about consumerism and whether it is at all possible to scale back, to um, cull the herd in terms of our collecting habits. And in the evening here in New York, I had the chance to finally present to you on the last round of New York City auctions from last weekend. There are some other auctions that are coming up that I want to talk about in the coming days and weeks, and we'll certainly have the time. I think there is a single owner auction coming up in January in Phillips. There was an interesting auction at Bonhams that just concluded a couple of days ago, midweek in London, that I want to sift through with you because there were some interesting watches, especially watches that relate to the motorsport. But anyway, we will have time to do that. For now, we have 2 more minutes or so. In that time, I'll just ask you to hit the like button. If you want to support the channel, the information is in the crawling ticker. It is included in the video description, and the links are also provided in the chat pinned there. I thank Bezos for the super sticker, JJ for the super chats, and everyone else, including Bezos, GB Vol, Orange Hand, good to see you, and Eric L, Hans Knees and Toes, and JB, as well as Aussie Expat for being here with me, supporting me, intervening, and contributing in the chat. I appreciate you all. I'll see you tomorrow for sure. Maybe again, we will try to do, one midday, one later in the day. Who knows? I will do my best to return your favors, pay back your support in some way, because again, this channel is completely at the behest of the audience. It is entirely beholden to the audience. I couldn't be here if it weren't for your support, and hopefully that support will continue and the channel will continue to expand and broaden its base as well. So thank you again for your support. Thank you again for your presence. I will see you tomorrow. And until then, I bid you adieu. Take care, friends. Please hit the like button on the way out. I appreciate you all. And I can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Goodbye.